Well, hello to you all. Winnie and I are here to chat about 2024 horror book releases that look absolutely incredible. And I thought I would kind of let you know what is coming out and which ones are really speaking to me. Winnie, you're gonna have to go down, okay? Go and rest for a little bit, okay? There you go. First up is Midnight on Beacon Street. This is coming out on January 30th, so we actually don't have much to wait for this one. And this is calling to me. It takes place in October 1993, and we follow a babysitter who's taking care of two kids. I believe one of them is 6, one of them is 12. The 12-year-old is very reluctantly being babysat, and the mom is out on a date night, a much needed date night. This babysitter, I think, has babysat for the family before. She is like their favorite babysitter, very reliable. She does have some anxiety, but it's a really nice evening. And they're just doing things like watching a movie, having pizza, like all the normal things that you do as a babysitter. And then strange things start happening at the house. There are unexpected visitors at the door. There are strange phone calls. And by the end of the night, the little boy, the 6-year-old, is standing in a pool of blood. What happened? I absolutely need to know. This is giving like incredible horror movie vibes. There was one movie that I watched, it's like a classic, about like a babysitter on the phone, like getting strange phone calls. What was that movie called? Does anyone remember? And it just was terrifying to me. So it's very much giving those vibes. Next is Thirst. This is coming out on March 5th. And it is a vampire story with a really gothic feel to it. You follow two women of two different time periods. So in the first time period, it's the 19th century, and we're following a vampire who's moved from Europe to Buenos Aires. Is that how you say that? She's moved, and she's watching villages transform from villages to like cities, and she also is watching yellow fever sweep this area that she's in, and she has to somehow adapt to this area and try to blend in with humans. And then we follow a woman in present day, and her mom is dying, and she ends up meeting a vampire, a female vampire in the cemetery. These two women meet, and they are transformed forever, and I don't know how, and I'm eager to learn. I really like that we're following female vampires. I feel like that's, I haven't read a ton of vampire books, I will say, but when I think of vampires, I usually think of male vampires for some reason. And I just like that there's a gothic feel to it, that there's a bit of historical elements to it. Sounds very good. Next is another book coming out on March 5th. It's The Haunting of Velkwood. And this is about the area of Velkwood and how it has some links to the occult. Documentaries have been done on this area. And we follow a woman who grew up in Velkwood and was able to escape essentially with two of her friends. Meanwhile, I believe she lost her mother, and I believe she lost a sibling as well. She has never looked back. She has kind of been hopping from job to job, but someone does track her down and asks her if she will go back for a price. March 5th is a really big day for a lot of big horror books coming out. The next one is Murder Road by Simone St. James. You guys know I really love Simone St. James. Her books are like horror light, I will say. They're usually haunting related. There's some sort of haunted element, but they're not gory by any stretch of the imagination. So this takes place in 1995, and we follow a couple, April and Eddie, who are on their way to their honeymoon destination. They're taking a little road trip to it, and they're finding themselves to be a little lost. Now they see a female hitchhiker on the side of the road. They decide to pick her up, and soon realize that there's more to the story. This woman has gone through more of an ordeal when they see that her clothes have blood on it. They bring her to the hospital where she promptly dies. And April and Eddie's honeymoon seems to be over because they end up completely ensnared in this strange little area where women have been murdered time and time again on Atticus Line. It's like a road where people are being murdered, and they start looking into it themselves. I'm assuming there's going to be absolutely a haunted element to it because that is what Simone St. James does best. Next is The Gathering by C.J. Tudor. It's coming out on April 11th. And C.J. Tudor used to write thrillers and now is dipping her toes into horror, which I'm not complaining about. We've got a small town in Alaska, a missing boy, and bodies popping up. So we're following a detective who has never been to this small town before. They're being brought in from out of town to work alongside the sheriff who witnessed a similar murder 25 years ago. And it quickly becomes apparent that they're either dealing with a psychopath who's like rearing his ugly head again, or something worse. That sounds like a lot of fun. Next up might be a tiny bit of a stretch. It's The Household by Stacey Halls. This is also coming out on April 11th. Now, I wouldn't usually put Stacey Halls in like major horror. She's not extremely scary. She is not, there's no like gore in her books, but she is like, I would say, one of the queens of Gothic literature. And Gothic books really stem from horror. That is where they started. And so forgive the stretch, I had to put this in here. This follows a group of women at a little cottage called Urania Cottage. This cottage gives women a second lease on life. The women who come to this cottage have been petty thieves, have been prostitutes in the past, and it gives them a place to rest and maybe restart their lives. We also follow the benefactor or benefactress of Urania Cottage. A few miles away, a woman named Angela lives, and she lives in this like beautiful mansion. A man who has stalked her for a long time is getting out of prison. She is terrified, and her life and the women at Urania Cottage, their lives intersect. Will they all survive this stalker person? I'm terrified of the concept of stalking. There's something about home invasion and stalking that I cannot deal with. So I'm very interested in reading this one, that's for sure. The House That Horror Built by Christina Henry is coming out on May 14th. I've never read a Christina Henry book before, but I've only heard good things, and I'm very interested. This one sounds incredible. It follows a woman named Harry. She is a maid at a very famous horror director's home. He did like some cult classic horror movies and promptly stopped directing when some sort of tragedy happened to his family. But the home is filled with all of these props from the movies, and she is dusting around them. She's been his housemate for a very long time. She knows him well. She knows he values discretion, and she's given that to him for many years, especially because she really relies on this job. She has a son to raise. It's important to her. One day, she starts to hear noises coming from behind a locked door that she does not go into. She does not dust in that room. She doesn't clean because she doesn't have access to it. And it becomes clear over the days that it's a human voice, and it's a human voice calling out for help. And she is not sure if she can offer the discretion needed with someone locked in a room. Like this man, this horror movie director, does not have people over. So who is this person? Are they being held against their will? It seems like it. So fun. And the last book I want to share with you is Horror Movie by Paul Tremblay. This is coming out on June 25th. I'm really looking forward to a new Paul Tremblay. I enjoy his writing a lot. So this follows a group of directors. They create a movie called Horror Movie. It becomes extremely well known, almost notorious. Now, only 3 scenes of this movie are ever actually released, and yet it still becomes like a cult classic. And it's so much so beloved by the horror community that there's a group of people that want to do a remake of Horror Movie. There's only been one survivor from that original movie, and it's the kid who played the thin kid. Now, of course, he's a man, and he was the only surviving actor, and he agrees to help them do this remake. As they start pressing play and start recording, all of the stuff from the first movie starts coming into his head again, and like past and present almost blur, and he's wondering what cost he is going to pay, like what price he's going to pay for doing this remake, and yet he feels compelled to do it. Sounds really good. Those are all of the horror books that are coming out in 2024 thus far that I know of that sound really incredible. If I had to pick one that I will absolutely be buying myself and pre-ordering, it just has to be Midnight on Beacon Street. I'm so excited that I don't have long to wait to read this, because that idea of being young, I think the babysitter is something like 17. Can you be like, imagine being so young and just having something terrible happen to you. I think that's also the premise of Halloween, which I loved watching and should rewatch that. Anyway, of all of these books, do you have one that you're like, okay, I'm pre-ordering this, I cannot wait? I'd love to know what that is. For me, it's Midnight on Beacon Street, but I'd love to know what yours is. I will talk with you very soon. Bye, guys.